He was local and did amazing woodwork. The cafe curtains that would cover the upper portions were being sewn even now by the very capable Franny Charles. The fabric Thea, with Ellie Brass's input, had chosen was a beautiful combination of browns, rusts, and greens. It was earthy and warm, with less a feel of autumn than that of a desert in bloom. The latte mugs would be arriving soon. Those Thea had commissioned from a pottery near Bandera. One of the women there threw the most gorgeous designs, and the art Thea had requested from her catalog was a perfect complement for the curtains. The hooked rugs to go beneath the shop's small cafe tables and in front of the groupings of cushy club chairs would be longer in coming. They were being made to order and would pull together the color scheme. Yesterday, the baskets for the bread had shipped from a market in Arizona. The owner sold only handmade items and funneled the proceeds back to the women who couldn't risk putting their name on their work. It was the same with the mugs and the rugs. And while the shutters would bear Angelo Caffey's logo, the label on the curtains above would say Bread and Bean. No one would ever know Franny Charles had sewn them. Now, fingers crossed that pulling the trigger and opening the shop in Hope Springs, Texas, instead of Austin, which was overrun with bakeries and coffee shops, or Round Rock, where Thea had grown up but couldn't imagine ever returning to, would end up being one of the few right decisions she'd made. Staying with Todd for so long sure hadn't been, though leaving had probably saved her life, as had buying the house on Dragonfire Hill. There had never been a dragon, of course. There had been trash barrels and burning tires and illegal bonfires and campsites. The hill was out of the way, and the house on top, abandoned for a very long time, had been worth little until Thea had saved it. The land had been used and misused accordingly by vagrants and drifters and criminal types. But dragons had teeth. Dragons had scales. Dragons didn't let anyone close. She liked the idea of living where the mythical beasts were known to, metaphorically, tread. Of being able to see anyone approach. Of having heavy doors with heavy locks and ballistic-resistant windows. It had taken a lot of money to outfit the house, but no one uninvited would ever get in, and Todd would never miss the cash. The renovations made her feel safe, and better able to keep the women who counted on her safe, too. Because that was all that mattered. Seeing that not one of them ever faced another fist or belt, or the base of a blender, or the wrong end of a shotgun or a knife blade, or even the sting of hurtful words hurled out of hatred or spite. That none of them ever had to visit an emergency room again for any preventable reason. To get stitches, to have bones set, to be questioned and made to feel at fault for suspicious injuries. Pushing aside the unsettling thoughts, Thea closed her eyes to center herself and listened. The traffic on the street outside was minimal, though she knew from talking to Callum Drake, who owned Bliss, the confectionery next door, and to Peggy Butters, whose Butters Bakery sat on the other side of Callum's shop, that weekends were madhouse crazy. She liked that a lot. Being too busy with work to think of anything else. Her well-laid plans for Bread and Bean were coming together beautifully. Everything had unfolded exactly as she'd intended. She was where she was supposed to be. Finally. The only thing left to do, she mused as she unrolled the shop's blueprint across the floor and dropped to sit in front of it, was hope none of her secrets decided to rear their ugly heads, and pray no one ever found out what had happened to Todd. There were more things Dakota Keller had forgotten about his teenage years spent in Texas than he would probably ever realize. Self-preservation was like that, and he couldn't regret what he couldn't recall. But one thing he would never forget was the top of Thea Clark's head. The way at 15 years old she'd sat on his bedroom floor in a complete split, leaning forward, textbooks spread out in front of her. She would stretch her feet, her toes pointed like a ballerina's, as if the motion helped her think. She'd hold them there like that, scribbling furiously on her homework, then relaxed them as she lifted her pencil from the page. The woman sitting similarly on the floor in front of him now was doing the same thing.